Awesome. So I will give your introduction for the recording and for Shadaria. So welcome to BU-CSI Presents. Tonight we have Elissa Shakov. Is that how you pronounce it?
Actually, it's Martinez now.
Oh, Martinez. Okay. My
I
apologies.
well, during the pandemic, I moved, I got married, so there was a lot going on.
Sure.
So it's Martinez now.
Okay. Congrats on that. Wow. Okay. Um, but yes, she is our doctoral student at large, and she will be presenting tonight on research and how it doesn't have to suck, and it's going to be great. So if you'd like to start, that'd be awesome.
I'll take it away. Yeah. So thank you for that. And yeah, I should have let you know because in some places I live in between the two last names professionally, like even my license in Florida, they still haven't changed it over to Martinez. So no worries about that. Thank you everyone for joining in. What I really would like to do today is, because we have a nice intimate group, is answer any questions that you guys have about research. I have a couple of talking points that I wanted to make, and I can talk you through some of my experience with research because, full disclosure, I used to think it sucked a lot. I was really intimidated by it. I'm by no means an expert. I'm still a student when it comes to research, but I feel like I've come a long way and feeling much more comfortable in understanding the process of engaging in research and the importance of research, because that's also something that, I think when I was getting my master's, it was means to an end kind of stuff that I would do literature reviews and engage in what I needed to do, but I wasn't full on into it. Being in the PhD program and then being a doctoral candidate like I am now, being in my dissertation phase, it became something that I wasn't able to avoid. And I also felt like I needed to embrace. So I say all of that really just because I assume that people who are joining this either have no experience or have had bad experiences, or are more expert than me and might have something more to add. So for any of those scenarios, I do welcome conversation. I want this to be interactive. So I think what I want to do to start is to talk a little bit about my journey through research and kind of where it started, where I am now. When I was in undergrad, I was studying psychology as my major, and I decided to do a senior thesis. I worked with a team at my undergrad school at University of Florida, and I completed a study under the supervision of a psychologist. And when it got to the point of defending, I kind of freaked out. And I was like, I don't think I can defend this. I'm really not comfortable. And him and I decided that I don't need to defend. Instead of graduating, I don't know, there's like different levels of cum laude or whatever it was, that I was going to do the one that didn't require a defense because it was causing me a lot of anxiety. I don't think I've ever shared that with the group at Barry, but it was something that I share that because it really freaked me out. I felt like I didn't have a grasp on what I wrote. I felt like I was in over my head, and a little bit of an imposter syndrome experience, or a lot, I should say, when it came to research. And so I ended up staying up there at UF for my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Again, didn't do much when it came to research. I was involved in other ways. But then coming to Barry and wanting to pursue the PhD, I had to shift my focus because I knew it was part of the program. And I also recognized how helpful in my clinical work, knowing what current literature was saying about my clients, how it was really helpful for me. So for example, using evidence-based approaches with clients with eating disorders or with my clients with PTSD diagnoses was really helpful for me. So I think part of it was a maturity thing. And another part was knowing that I wanted to pursue a degree that did require more research than my master's program did. I also think that there was a culture shift in my experience at UF versus at Barry, where at UF it's a research institute, so it felt a little bit daunting. And Barry's focus really is on teaching and supervision, or this program is at least. So it was more of a component rather than a main focus, and just felt more comfortable for me. So that's more just like a personal opinion aside, but that was, I think, I had a shift in the experience of what research was going to be like for me. So the first point I made that I wanted to speak to was the process of getting comfortable. I think part of it was time, and then also engaging in class activities that required research. So really leaning into that experience and practice, and not pretending or feeling like I needed to pretend like I knew everything, really leaning into the experiences of the faculty member that was either teaching the class or that was mentoring me for whatever experience that I was a part of. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or questions on the process of getting comfortable. I have other talking points to speak through, but I just want to give an opportunity if anyone on the call has any thoughts on that or wants to like voice any concerns that they have. And, you know, I can give advice because I'm not your therapist and that's not the point of this. I can give you some things that I think might be helpful, if that would be helpful at this point. If not, I'll continue on. Okay, I'll continue on. So I think one of the things that was helpful for me was linking up with a faculty member to get more experience. And I did that with both Dr. Schur and Dr. Machuca, just reaching out to see if there were any projects that they were currently working on that I could really just not be a full-on partner in the research necessarily, but to have more of a mentor-mentee experience with the research. And so most of our professors have their toes dipped in some kind of project. And when I met with Dr. Schur, for example, she knew some of my clinical interests and my background. And so she shared with me projects that she thought would be helpful for me as a clinician and as a budding researcher to be involved in. And so we talked about ways that I could support her project. And through that conversation, for example, with Dr. Schur, she walked me through the process of what it's really like to engage in research. And so the anxiety glasses that I had on, if you will, prior to that about research really made the process seem way more daunting than I think it is in actuality, or I know rather. So she was able to share some of the procedural things that she did with engaging in research, with reaching out to the IRB to get approved. So having some of those conversations with someone like Dr. Schur and also Dr. Machuca, someone else I've done that type of work with, was really helpful for me. It made the experience feel much more concrete and again, not as daunting. And one of the other points that I wanted to talk about was leaning into the classes and your classmates for research focused either projects or experiences in the classroom. You know, there are some, hopefully none of my professors are watching this recording, but, you know, there are some activities or assignments that kind of just got through, or, you know, you do because you need to finish it at, you know, a midterm point or at the end of the semester. What I really have tried to do with research is in the classroom, figure out topics that I actually cared about or I actually found interesting, and not what I thought maybe the teacher or professor wanted us to do. You know, maybe if a teacher or professor rather is really into resiliency, but I'm not into resiliency, or substance use disorder, but, you know, I've talked about trauma and eating disorders with some of you on this call before. And if you haven't heard me talk about them, those are the two kind of clinical areas of focus that I have most interest in. Really focusing in on things that I found interesting within the boundaries of the classroom and going all in rather than half-assing those assignments. And depending on how your classes are structured, leaning into the experiences of classmates that you might have that have more experience with research. I think it also can normalize the experience and make it feel less daunting than what I had kind of built up in my head before doing some of these activities and kind of leaning into the experience, getting some mentor-mentee conversations going with faculty as well as my classmates. Any thoughts or any questions? Again, I don't want you to feel like I'm just talking at you. I know you came for a presentation, but if there's any questions or thoughts coming up, I just want to make sure to give the opportunity.
Yeah, I actually like that you mentioned that, because in my research methods class, we've had some assignments where we had to choose qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, peer-reviewed articles, and kind of skim through it and understand just the different parts of every peer-reviewed article. And at first I was just like, oh my gosh, this assignment just sounds like such a drag. But then I realized that I've been really interested in bipolar. So I was able to find a qualitative research paper on bipolar, one quantitative, one mixed methods, and I was I was really into it. I mean, it was a few weeks ago. It's been a while. I think it was back in at the beginning of October, end of September when I read those. So it's not really fresh in my memory, but I definitely use that to kind of delve in, just because I don't know, sometimes research, it like statistics for me sometimes can be what's it called? It's just it's not an interest for me, but at the same
Yeah.
time I knew I wanted to understand more about the research behind methods on how to treat bipolar and what works and what doesn't. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because one of the other things that I am going to go into a little bit is not only topics of interest, but also methodology of interest and levels of comfort. Yeah, it's when you do a deep dive into the literature with something that you're actually interested in, it can get really exciting, actually. I mean, reading an article or something that's like 200 pages, never really that exciting. But like one example, there was a study that I came across about body image, because my current research is on counselor experience of their body image for counselors who specialize in the treatment of eating disorders. And there was one study that had to deal with perception of fitting through a sliding glass door, and different sized body individuals had different experiences. And I'm like, that is so cool and creative. Like, I might not do that type of study or, design something like that, but like, it was interesting to read. It didn't feel dry. It didn't feel like something that I was just reading to read. I was like, oh, this is actually helpful in not only the project that I'm doing, but also just an intriguing presentation. And in searching or looking through existing literature, something that I found that's kind of a nice hack, if you will, and I guess, going back to the title of this presentation of research not having to totally suck, is there's certain things that we need to reinvent the wheel with when it comes to new ideas, when it's contributing to research and the body of literature that exists. But there are other things that we just don't have to reinvent the wheel with. And so when you're reading literature that exists, that's published, look at their method, see if they actually walk through each and every step. Look through the approach that they took, look at the way that they analyze the data, because that's something that can be redone with a different client population or with different variables. But we don't need to invent things that don't need to be invented. And that's not you doing a half job at a project. It's looking at ways that projects have been completed in the past and using that to influence or inform the way that you're doing your project. So that's something that I had never really thought of before designing and developing both qualitative and quantitative projects for my classes. And I will admit, I felt way more intimidated by quantitative. I don't know if that's a majority of counseling students that feel that way. But that was definitely an area that felt much scarier for me. And I did make the decision for my dissertation to do qualitative. It's because I didn't need to do quantitative. It was a little more uncomfortable for me. Qualitative, I've done multiple studies with, or rather projects, I should say, in my program. And so there's also not this need to do the thing that feels the most foreign to us or feels the most uncomfortable for us. I think I could probably do a quantitative study, but I've done qualitative, and it's okay to be a qualitative researcher. So that's also something, when I think about things that interest us, it's also things that we feel comfortable with and that align with our perspective as researchers. So for me, I can't say that all of the research I'll do in my entire career will all be qualitative, because I might have different research questions that need to be answered from a quantitative perspective. But it doesn't mean that I can't do qualitative work or mixed methods work. And on top of that, one of the ways that we can make research not suck as much too is if we have a study that might feel out of our scope or out of our area of expertise or understanding, is go back to our mentors, go back to people that we've worked with who have done quantitative studies or have done qualitative studies with X, approach or design for the study, and get their opinion. People who have done this before were once in our position where they hadn't ever done research. I'm probably farther along in my experience than you guys are, but I am not that much farther along. I have more experience, but we all start out somewhere where we don't know what we're doing. And so finding someone who is a mentor, in my opinion, is something that's critical to make this feel, this part of our work, if research is something that you're considering or need to do to get through a program, important to do. When it comes to mentorship or linking up with a professor, I will say it's important to assess and determine the type of mentor that would be most helpful for you. It might not even be the professor that you get along with personality-wise the most. It just might be a really good working relationship. Now, I happen to really like Dr. Machuca, and we have a good working relationship. So he's my dissertation chair, and I've done research with him in the past. We're actually working on doing revisions to a study that will be published soon. But what I will say, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. What I will say is him and I have a nice working relationship, holding each other accountable. I can ask questions and not feel like I'm asking a dumb question. You know how with some people or professors, it just might feel not as comfortable. And at the same time, I don't feel like it's a passive relationship. I feel like I'm being pushed to do things, and I'm not just like a sous chef. We're creating this meal, if you will, together. So I will just underscore, re-highlight how helpful it has been to have someone who's a mentor through a research process, to be able to just, again, I think a lot of it goes back to comfort for me, because none of the type of research that we're doing, at least, feels like completely rocket sciencey. You don't, at least at the point in my career, I'm not doing these ultra complicated approaches where the analysis is beyond what I can do. I'm realistic about it. And having a mentor to kind of bounce ideas off of, and also be like, does this seem realistic to you, can be really helpful. One of the other things, kind of bouncing off of that idea, is reading what your professors suggest. And now I really feel like I sound like a future professor by saying that, because it's like, okay, Elissa, whatever. So my methodologist for my dissertation has suggested for me to read either certain seminal articles, which means like the original article for an idea, or books on an approach or ways of analyzing data. And when those type of suggestions are made, I would strongly suggest following them, because there's no way to understand how to do aspects of the work of research without developing an understanding. It's not knowledge that's just like second nature. Whereas there's an art to, being a counselor, there's some creativity there. Of course, we need to know a little bit about the theories, but when it comes to research, it's a little bit more, it's not totally black and white. There is creativity, but when it comes to analysis or how to describe a method or things like that, it is really helpful to understand what we're doing from something that's not just like a random, like Google, what is phenomenology? It's like, well, let me see how you're actually supposed to analyze this. So taking resources really into consideration. And if there's something that doesn't make sense to you, ask that person. You can say, I read this sentence 45 times and I'm still not getting it. Can you please explain this to me? And that's something that I found helpful. So yeah, any questions about that? I know I'm kind of rambling. I just had a lot of random thoughts to share with you guys, and I have some others, but any questions or thoughts so far, or anything with particular research that you've engaged in or have thought of engaging in that you wanted to kind of talk out or had thoughts on?
I appreciated what you said about not having to reinvent the wheel, just because I've always kind of thought about that whenever I read the very end of any peer-reviewed article on how these researchers would change the study for the future and what just people continue to look at. And since it's all the way at the end, I feel like maybe some people skip over it. But I like that you said that, because I mean, it makes sense, like, to work smarter and not harder, since the whole, I think a huge purpose of research is to understand what other people are looking at and to grab from them and apply it and to continue the research so we get better. So
yeah, we all have to start from somewhere. I think for me, it's been helpful to identify something that I'm actually passionate and interested in to do studies on. But on the heels of that, it's really helpful to look at what studies are telling us, like, oh, this is something that could be really helpful. Working on an article critique at this moment. I've done that assignment before, and I actually find that to be really helpful. So being able to critique an article and look at what's, that you think is done well or could be adjusted, that's all information. That's all tools, if you will, for your research tool belt to understand when you're conducting your own research, what will be helpful or unhelpful. So I think that's a great assignment that I don't know which professor has you doing that, but those are, I think, really helpful assignments. When it comes to research topics, I was working with Dr. Rudis. I was in one of his classes, and it was toward the beginning of my program. I think we did an article critique at some point in the class, and I was like, I need to figure out what I think I want to do for my dissertation. I know it's early on. But he just asked me a lot of questions about what I'm interested in. And I think I was like aiming for these like earth-shattering, new groundbreaking ideas when it came to my research topic. And he had to bring me back down to earth a little bit and be like, why don't you look at this or think about this or think about the counselor experience with this? Because I wanted to like make everyone aware of how important fat phobia is, and being aware of our impact as counselors and people in different sized bodies. And he was like, that can be, after you've been a researcher for 20 years doing some of that work, but like, what interests you right now? And so that's where it took a while, but being able to come up with my topic of focusing in on counselors' experiences of their own body image kind of stemmed from, is not every idea has to be this grand idea. It can be, and it also, at the other end of the spectrum, doesn't have to be so specific, which I think I was working between those two extremes and coming up with research ideas, that it can be somewhere in the middle. Of course, you have to find something that doesn't exist yet, which is not as hard as I would have thought in some ways, especially if you're looking at the counselor experience with something. I think the pandemic has also opened up a lot of opportunities for different topics related to counselor and client experience, and also multiculturalism and other things people on this call might be interested in. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I do know one of the takeaways from kind of all of those thoughts is being able to combine a lot of your experiences, taking a little bit of a risk, but not too much, just doing something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone can make the experience of when you're doing your own study, make research suck a little bit less, is leaning into the resources that we have all around us. I think a lot of the times we don't necessarily reach out to our professors for guidance or mentorship with research. We might be more prone to ask about jobs or, counseling intervention or other things that just aren't as out there. And also, I think there's a maturity thing, at least for me, in understanding the benefit of contributing to the body of research and not being so resistant to it makes it seem less crappy too. So a couple of thoughts on, just a couple of thoughts I had about that.
Can
no,
I?
Yeah.
Sorry. I think something that makes it so nerve-wracking for me is finding resources that are current and also peer-reviewed. That's been like a challenge for me. So I find like these really, really good articles and they're either outdated, like from the 90s or early 2000s, or they're not like peer-reviewed. So do you have any insight on like when something like that happens?
That's a great question and a great point. Nicole, am I able to share my screen? Can you give me permission to do that? So of course you can go through Barry's library. I don't know if you've ever done that to do research. But one of the things, I'm just going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint pulled up, but you can ignore that for now. If you just go to Google Scholar, one of the things that I will do is, so say it's eating disorders, substance use and eating disorders. One of the things that I will do is I can either put in a custom range, as you see on the side of my screen. So I might do since 2017, because it might be the last 5 years. And then I can, what I do is I check to see if the articles have links. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see these are actually linked to journals. And so that's one way that I will quickly navigate that experience. And I don't know if that's something that you've done similarly, or if that's something you haven't quite tried yet, but that can be helpful for me in my process when I'm trying to find articles that are peer-reviewed and also relevant and published within the last 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what kind of research format or platform do you use? Do you use Barry's or
I use Barry's the library.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been as helpful for me.
Yeah,
it usually takes me to like, it has a lot of videos or other things, but nothing really specific to what I'm looking for.
So one thing that I would suggest trying is Google Scholar. Of course, we have the research, reference, sorry, of Barry's library, which I have used. And what I'll typically do is I'll go through, I think it's called Psych Info, or there's a psychology related resource within Barry, but I will typically frequently just use Google Scholar because I want to make sure that I have access. Now, there are also some times where I'm not finding what I need on Google Scholar. Like I said, I do use Barry's library as well. And if we don't have, like, if they don't have a link to the study, if you reach out to a librarian, we can request it and get access to it. If you don't mind me asking, is there a particular area that you've tried to find stuff on and you can't? Because I have a good little lesson that Dr. Machuca taught me.
I was trying to find resources for or linking self-love or self-confidence with the LGBTQ teenagers or adolescents.
So what you might want to try first is just self-love and LGBTQ period, or self-love plus counseling. One of the things, oh, that's really cool. One of the things that I wasn't doing that Dr. Machuca taught me, and we had a similar conversation on one of our research calls, is that some of my criteria when I was doing the search was way too specific, or was also only focused on, say, LGBTQ individuals. And so one of the things that can be really helpful is doing a much broader search. So say I click on this article, I can also scroll all the way to the bottom. And one of the hacks is looking at the articles that, like here, mental health disparities among transgender youth, although it's not talking specifically about self-love. That's a poor example because it's not hitting exactly what you're looking at. But in this article, if this was something that was very relevant to what you were looking for, going into the references that this article cites, I can't even tell you the amount of amazing rabbit holes I've gone down using that approach. So again, this is part of that whole, like, not breaking what doesn't need, or not breaking what doesn't need fixing, or whatever the saying is. I think I said that wrong. You know, being able to use the references that are already cited in an article can be really helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful because
it does help.
I've gone on some really amazing rabbit holes that I'm like, I did not know I could find all of this because I was just banging my head against the wall doing a very specific you know, set of questions or criteria in the search boxes, but sometimes broadening it can be kind of helpful, or very helpful. There was something, I think I was doing body image. I think I was only looking for body image for counselors, but then I put like psychology or psychologist, because even though I'm looking for counselors, I was able to find information about, or, you know, even helping profession or helpers. So again, kind of going outside of what you would necessarily think to search is something that I have found helpful. And then again, I go into this study if this is something that is helpful for me. And then looking at the citations. So, this is about amputees. Well, not quite what I need. Again, horrible examples because I'm just doing this in real time. But going in and seeing, okay, this is something that would be really helpful for me to look into, and then hopping over to that article. Like, that's a good one. I might need to flag this one for my own study. So, for example, I'm not going to pay for this article. If I wanted this, you can reach out to Barry University's library and they can access it for you.
So is there an email that you would send or?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. It's been a little while since I've reached out to them, but there's definitely an email that I've reached out to. And again, I'm doing this in real time with you. So let's see. You can also ask your professors if there's someone that you can directly reach out to, but let's see if it'll let me click here. I don't know why that's being so slow. Oh, look, ask a librarian too. Okay, so there's a bunch of different phone numbers that you can call, but on that page before, I think I may have used this. When you log in, which I'm not going to go through that whole thing, but you can directly ask librarians questions. There's also research guides. This is something I've used actually. And again, I'm not going to click into it, but all of these resources for getting answers and help through the library. Oh, here you go. Library help at berry.edu is a good one. They'll direct you to who might be most helpful. So you can say something as specific as, I'm trying to find an article on self-compassion or self-love among LGBTQ individuals. I'm having a really hard time. Could you walk me through that or point me to a database that would be helpful? So that's another resource. Thank you for bringing up that point because I hadn't thought about sharing that with you. That's been really helpful for me in the past. This interlibrary loan service, this is where you can get books and articles that they might not have. But the librarians can get access for us.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot that we have at our fingertips that we're not necessarily aware of or aren't in the front for us.
Yeah.
So definitely lean into using the library. I can't even tell you how responsive they've been. Man, I've called other services at Berry that it takes a little while to get back to. The librarians are on it. So they're fantastic. I would definitely recommend reaching out to them. The other thing I wanted to show you guys that I had pulled up is I've had several of my classmates ask me, and we've asked professors, I didn't make this up there. If you Google or look up Berry University IRB, so let me just go to that. Institutional Review Board. This is the body that when you're completing a study, they have to approve it and make sure that you're not going to harm any human subjects, etc. So this is something that I would suggest flagging in your brain or on your computer for when you're going to conduct a study. This is going to be a really great resource for you in your research. Something that I had to keep in mind for my study that I'm working on is when submissions are due. So all of that is spelled out here on this website. There's lots of information on how to complete stuff that's required by IRB, frequently asked questions. So a lot of stuff that you might not know or might need some guidance on. You can ask your professors, but you can also very much look on this page to find some information. Now, one of the things that they do link to is the guidance for using IRBnet, which is the home for setting up a study. And this might be ahead of what some of you guys need, but just know that if you are in the process of creating or completing a thesis or any sort of actual project through Berry as a Berry student, you'll have to go through creating an IRB account and creating a project, and all of it is very much spelled out in this PowerPoint presentation, even down to like, where do I log in? What do I need to do? What kind of trainings do I need to complete? So I'm assuming I can probably send this in the chat to you guys. I don't know if that is helpful or applicable at this point with where you guys are. But if you ever need to find that, you can also reach out to me and be happy to guide this or guide you back to this. So yeah, it just kind of walks you through all those steps. Now, one of the things too with completing a project, yeah, you're very welcome, is just, again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to be brave and do this on our own. And I say we, I mean, I was talking to myself too, like I didn't need to be brave. I didn't need to do this on my own. If there was something that I just wasn't sure about, I would email my professor. I would ask my classmate who had done this. And this is what my classmates do who aren't as far along in the process of their dissertation. I had someone recently ask me, how do I submit to the IRBnet? Where is this? And so I sent them this PowerPoint. Use your resources wisely. And if you don't have resources, I'm now a resource. So now you have no excuse. I'd be happy to walk you through any questions you have or set up a call to talk about, you know, if it's something like this, or if it's something like going through a literature review, how to do that. So those are just a couple of pointers. I know we have about probably 10 minutes left, but I wanted to just, again, I told you I was a little bit casual in my preparation for this because I wanted to just answer questions that would be helpful. But let's see, counseling student anxiety or something like that. Why is everyone so anxious? Let's click on that one. If I am not sure how to design a study, but I know I want to know, this is genetic counseling graduate students, interesting. So say I wanted to do something about an exploration of stress among counselor education students. I mean, this would be hopefully maybe a gold mine. I can look and see the way that the article is designed. I can look and see that they did a survey. This was designed by 3 members of the research team. So this might be above what I would feel comfortable doing. So I might not move on to another paper to help me formulate a way to design a study, but say I'm at the point where I can design a questionnaire or I have questions I want to ask. This one has the state trait anxiety inventory. Okay, I can mess with that. I understand that one. I could give that to people. And then I can also have people describe how they spend their typical day. This can be a really helpful part of an article to look at in understanding how to design a study. And then I can also see here, since it's mixed methods, you see quantitative and qualitative analyses. I can go through here and see exactly how they completed the study. So again, spending some time, even though a lot of the time when I was just looking for literature review stuff, I would skip to the end and see what the results were. Going into this part of the study and seeing how it was completed can be really helpful. For dissertations, if anyone's considering doing a thesis or a dissertation, there's also a complete database of dissertations that are available through the Barry University Library. So those are also people who are not lifelong researchers yet, that might have studies that are less complicated when it comes to the research design. I also, when I knew I was going to do a phenomenology study, I would look on Google Scholar for phenomenology plus, let's say it's anxiety. Let's see if we come up with anything that have links. I can click on this study and then go to the PDF as another example. And I can go down to the method, their assessment, how they did this. And again, it's not me. This might not be a study that would be applicable. Again, I didn't predetermine what I was going to look up for you guys, but this is part of what research is. It's like, okay, well, this one doesn't work, on to the next, or, oh, this actually is exactly what I would be doing. Let me continue this. So you can pick and choose what from different studies will be actually helpful. So for this study, it might not be the way it's designed, but it might be some of the background, the research. So I see that they're talking about, I don't know what SAD is. Did they say what it is? Separation anxiety disorder. Here we go. So I might get something from their lit review that's really helpful. And so that's all I need to take from this study. I can move on, or I might scroll all the way to the bottom and look at where they found their research from, or again, the suggestions for future research. There's lots of things you can do with existing literature to benefit the work that you're doing, not only in conducting research, but also say I'm doing research because I want to help my clients who have, this clinical presentation. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but those are some of the ways that my brain kind of works through when I'm looking at research. And knowing that not every study that I'm looking at is going to actually be helpful, but it's absolutely something that I can potentially take something from. Oh, look, they're in Miami. So yeah, any other questions? Or anything you want me to show you? I'll take that silence as now you guys are prepared to be researchers, but if not, you're going to reach out to me because I can absolutely answer any questions you have.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I learned so much from you. Thank you so much.
Oh, stop. Well, I hope you learned at least a couple of things.
Well, I mean, I learned like, that, I look at sometimes research, I also feel anxiety, but sorry, my dog. But it was just, I don't know, it was like comforting. Like I learned kind of like through your experiences, just how research, because sometimes I think about it and I'm like, oh no. But then I also have never asked anyone who's done research how it's like. So, because it's daunting. It's daunting.
It is. It is. And, a lot of people who talk about research are experts or have been doing it for a long time. They're not people who might not be as comfortable or might not be as seasoned. And it's like, man, even if I'm not seasoned, I can do this. Like it's a process to get to that point of even having that level of comfort. And I go back to mentorship for most of that, and leaning in and knowing that you're not going to be the best at something and you're going to mess up and you're going to get feedback, and just take it for what it is, which is feedback and helping you grow.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for attending. I hope that even if you didn't get a ton out of it, you got a couple of morsels, and that's kind of all you can, I can hope to give to you today. And I think the real goal here is to just know that you have resources, including me, including the library, including your faculty, and lean into that, because you don't have to do any of this on your own.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What I really liked is the hope that you gave us tonight, because I was kind of under the impression that, if you do a dissertation, like everything would be on you and you would have to do all the research and you wouldn't have anyone to help. So I like that you shared light that, you have a handful of resources that we can go to get it done.
Yeah, and there's a whole dissertation course that we have to take in preparation for completing a dissertation, that the whole course is just talking about how to do the research. And when you're in the class, it's kind of like, okay, I get it, this is what has to happen. But then as you're going through the process, you're like, okay, I understand why we have this research methods class, why we have this dissertation class. It's so we know what to do. When you are a little bit more on your own, because it's not as structured in terms of like, I don't have a class I have to go to, but now I know my resources and I know that I need to manage my time on my own, but I'm not alone in it per se. Yeah. So yeah, if you have anything that comes up as you're completing any research, feel free to reach out to me. I think everyone has my contact, but if not, I'm just going to type it in the chat. I've also had other students call or text me. If I don't answer, it's probably because I'm in labor or giving birth to my child, but in seriousness, feel free to reach out to me. I have chat with other Berry students about random, different things, not just research, but I'd be happy to specifically talk about that with you guys as well.
Thank you, and safe delivery.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So yeah, everybody else have a really
Yeah.
good evening, and I appreciate you guys attending and asking really good questions.
Yes, thank you. And I also just wanted to remind everyone, you and Shadari and whoever is watching, that this Saturday, November 13th, we have the Sunshine Seminar, Exploring Curiosity with Dr. Jim Rudis. So if everyone can,
Best.
if you can, it's at 11 a.m. It's gonna be great. And yeah, so thank you so much for presenting, and thank you, Shidaria, for coming, and whoever's watching, thank you.
Thank you. And this is my first meeting, so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Welcome.
Oh, I kept it really casual for you. If you need me to need me to be more in presenter mode next time, let me know and I can whip up a PowerPoint for you.
No, this was awesome.
Okay, cool. I'm glad to hear that. Well, you guys both have a great night.
You
Thank
too.
you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Everyone.
All right, bye-bye.